Hi, my name is Matt. Today what we're going to do is my recipe for the perfect steak. There's lots of different things involved with this, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of these things for you. First off is salting. So what kind of salt you should use, things like that. I happen to use a seasoned salt. It doesn't really matter. You can go out in the store and buy the brand chef name at $7 or $8 a little thing, or you can make your own at home. My suggestion, a little bit of garlic powder, onion powder, coriander, white and black pepper. Leave it in one of your old spice containers. In about a week, it's all seasoned salt, ready for you to use. Now, when do you salt this? Two main methods on salting. First, season right before, and the other one is like a 12-hour. If you do salt these ahead of time, do a 12-hour salting. You should wrap them in saran wrap and make sure that there's an osmosis that happens. So what happens is the hygroscopic nature of salt draws the water out of the steak. Well, after 12 hours, it'll actually get reabsorbed back into the steak. Now, we don't want to do that with the right away because you season this guy right away. We're going to cook it. It's going to be ready to go. It's not going to have time to exude its water, so it's not going to leach out its water. I'm seasoning a little salt, pepper. Flip this guy over. More salt. You should be fairly liberal with the salting, especially when you're working with a steak this thick. I press the salt in a little bit. A little more pepper. We're going to place this onto a wire rack, and we're going to bake this. Now, this is where this method's a little bit different than most other methods. A lot of people will just throw this under the broiler, get some color on it, and call it a day. What this is going to do is this going to bring the meat slowly up to the temp that we want it. And the reason why we do that is proteins are like a sponge. The faster and the harder you cook it, the harder you're wringing out that sponge. It's going to hold less liquid and essentially going to be a lot drier of a steak. So the lower and slower you can cook it, the more moist it's going to be. Then we're going to take it and sear it. What's going to happen is we're going to have, after this thing is in the oven, the skin's going to shrivel, it's going to dry up. It's also going to have a nice hot temp, so it's going to be about 95 degrees on the outside. What that's going to do for us is that's less temperature it's going to need to create a crust whenever you're pan frying it. That's going to eliminate the gray band. A lot of people who cook their steaks all in one pan are going to have a nice thick gray band all around the steak and then this one nice little juicy medium pink area. This is going to eliminate that, or at least reduce it. So this is going to be medium through and through with a nice tiny little gray line and a beautiful crust. So now we're going to go ahead, get this in the oven, about 300 degrees, and we're going to cook this for about 25 minutes until our internal temperature is about 90-95 degrees. So our steak has been cooking at a low temperature until its internal temperature is around 95 degrees. What we're going to do now is we're going to sear it off. I have a nice pan here, something that can fit the steak. I'm going to take a little vegetable oil in the pan. This is a slightly non-stick pan, so I recommend heating the pan with oil inside of it. That way you don't overheat the pan past its toxic levels. We're going to heat this up high heat, and we're going to go until just the oil starts to smoke. Once you start seeing wisps of smoke coming up, then we know we're ready to drop our steak in. Okay, starting to see a little smoke. I'm going to take my steak, and I'm going to go top side down first because it's the driest. Into the pan. So the steak is in. We're going to sear this now for about 2.5 minutes per side max. Just enough to create a nice, beautiful, golden brown texture. Reason why I put the top side down first is it was the driest. And now this has a chance to kind of dry out a little bit as the residual heat will kind of cook it. This is a smoky process, so you may want to turn on your hoods or open a window when you're doing this. Okay, so been about 2.5 minutes on this side. We're going to go ahead and flip this guy over. Careful not to splatter yourself. See the nice, beautiful Maillard reaction going on here, the nice little browning. And we're going to go ahead, 2.5 more minutes on this side. And then we're going to take it out and we're going to rest it on a wire rack. The reason why we're going to rest on a wire rack is it's going to bleed a little bit of juice. If you rest it on a plate, that juice will then sog out the crust that you built, took so much time to build. Resting on a wire rack, it'll have a chance to bleed away. So we're about ready. Should be a nice good crust on the bottom. I'm going to take this off and rest it on my rack. Kill my heat. Let it rest 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much you want to rest it for your service. But 10 minutes will really ensure that a lot of the juices kind of get sucked back in. You don't lose them when you cut into it. If you cut into it too soon, you're going to lose a lot of juice. There's a lot of action going on inside this steak. So with the water too hot, it's going to bleed, and your steak's going to be a little bit chewy and dry. So here is my perfect steak. Should be cooked as red as a rosy prime rib.